with feeling, with gusto. I'm going to speak a little bit louder, and if the audio is not better tonight, then I'll just turn the ACF when I'm recording. But the other at the front of the letter didn't seem to bother, so I know that I'm a little bit closer to the phone now, the camera, so it should be a little bit better. What really counts is the title chapter 21 of The Only Game in Town, the Spirit Flyer series by John Bibby. What really counts. The whole field became quiet. No one could move because the king had wished it. Everyone had fallen into the peace of the deeper world as the king's son's presence filled the place. The silence was vibrant and rich, the way silence often is in the deeper world, especially before the king. Daniel felt his head being gently lifted up. The light all around shone on his tear-stained face. In that light, Daniel felt the courage to look deeper. A great cloud of light seemed to cover the whole field, and out of the cloud of white and light they appeared. 2 old red bicycles dove down from the cloud of light. The bike zoomed once over his head in a pitched hum. His eyes went wide in surprise as 2 sets of fat bicycle tires slowly passed over him the second time and stopped not 10 feet away. Daniel lifted his head higher, feeling the hopes of his wishes being answered. Though all the light around him was blindingly bright, Daniel could still see the 2 riders' faces. Susan Kramer was looking at Daniel with great concern. John Kramer stopped in the air beside her, hovering 3 feet off the ground. "What do you think?" John asked Susan. "There's still time," Susan said. "I believe the king's son can change anything." She looked down on Daniel and frowned. The ghostly snakes that had gathered to feast on the boy's fears and shame had all disintegrated the instant the glorious light hit them. Yet they left a stinking odor and a black tarry slimy slime which oozed off of Daniel in stringy globs. Trying not to notice it, she hopped off her old bicycle and took Daniel's hand. Daniel stood up. When he saw the slimy stuff on himself, he felt ashamed once more to be seen by Susan and John. At the moment of his shame, the big boy had frozen, went into a frenzy of action. A new message appeared as Susan helped Daniel to his feet. The message blinked on and off in big purple letters. Daniel Bailey, a pointless fool and failure to himself, his friend, and the 3 kings. Daniel stared at the message and felt horrified and exposed. That's when the message started to grow bigger. The letters got taller and blinked on and off, on and off, on and off. "It's true," Daniel said in shame as he looked at the message. "I can't do anything right." As he stared at the big board, he cringed when he saw a figure in the deep darkness that seemed to be moving closer and closer. Daniel knew without looking it was a reflection of himself, his ghost slave. The ghost slave ran up to the very edge of the big board and seemed larger than life. "You're mine," the ghost slave said. Then he looked at Susan and John. He sneered at them. "You're too late. He's reached 0. I've got him." "It's not true," Susan said to the ghost slave. Then she turned to Daniel. "He's a liar, Daniel, but you still have to face your fears. You can't let things from the past or the point system make you a slave the rest of your life. The ghost slave can make you believe he owns you, that he holds you on the chain, like a dog on a leash. But I've lied and cheated and done awful things I don't even want to talk about," Daniel said. "It was also I could get a better rank in the point system. I don't want to care about being ranked blank, but I do care. I used to be popular. Before my accident, people used to like me a lot." "There's nothing wrong with people liking you," Susan said sympathetically, "but they don't have to control you. They don't have to wear a false face or pretend to cheat to get people to like you. Even if they did end up liking you, they wouldn't really like you at all, but pretended to be. That's the ghost slave trying to take you over again. He's the one who will lie and cheat and do anything to be liked and popular. He's the one who sold out to the point system. Don't you see? He's trying to drag you from the kingdom of the kings back into his world." "But what other world is there?" Daniel asked. "I have to live in Centerville. I have to live with my mother and my friends." "You still belong to the kingdom of the 3 kings," Susan said. "And in their kingdom you aren't measured by points, but by love and mercy and forgiveness." Susan's words went right to his heart, straight to his heart. But then he saw the black slime oozing off his body. The old fears came back. "But look at me," Daniel moaned. "I'm a mess. I'm an absolute 0. "That's not true," Susan said. "The kings love you, and that's what counts. In the book of the Kings, it says that real love doesn't count up wrongs, but hopes all things. When someone loves you, they aren't loving your good points and bad points. They love you for just being you. At least that's the way the kings love us. And that's the way I love you too. Daniel hung his head in silence at the girl's words. He could barely stand to hear them. Deep inside, he found them hard to believe. How can you love without looking at a person's bad points? Daniel said. How can anyone do that? Well, I guess I'm learning how just by doing it, Susan said slowly. We're in the kingdom of the kings, and the greatest gift in their kingdom is love. That's what the King's Son gives us, and because that love is given to me, I share it with you. That's why we were sent here. Can you feel it? Can't you sense it? We're in his presence right now. We are? Daniel asked. Where do you think all the light is coming from? John Kramer asked with a friendly smile. We were told to turn on the lights of our spirit flyers. We also knew to use the generators this time because it took more power. Anyway, this is what happened. Daniel looked at the old red bicycles and noticed that the headlights were turned on. Yet there was light shining in splendor all around. He then looked up at the cloud of glory over his head. The boy blinked in surprise at what he saw in the light. The first time he had seen the face of the Prince of Kings was the day he had been riding with Dirk and his family. That was the day the lock on the chain around his neck had been broken, but the King's Son had seemed so mysterious and even distant then. Then he had seen him for a brief moment on the platform, But this time a quiet awe filled the boy's heart. All the while he had been talking, he had not realized the royal presence among them. At first, Daniel thought he was afraid. Then he knew that for the first time, for a long time, he felt good inside. It was the same kind of good feeling you felt when you were high above the clouds on your spirit flyer, racing towards the future, knowing something good and exciting was about to happen. Then the ghost slave shrieked in hideous laughter. You aren't going anywhere soon, Mr. Rank Blank, the ghost slave said. He held up the ends of a dark chain. At once Daniel's hopes dropped back down. But what do I do? Daniel asked fearfully, looking at the image of himself. Maybe he's right. Maybe I have reached zero. No, you fight, John Kramer said. You aren't a slave anymore. The locks of the chain have been broken. Then what do I do? Daniel asked. You've got to believe what's true about yourself, John said. The lies of the ghost slave will bury you, like they almost did. And the only way you break lies is to answer them with truth, because the King's Son set you free. You have to say it to remind yourself. Say, I am free because of the King's Son. I am free because of the King's Son, Daniel whispered half-heartedly. But when he did, the big board shuddered. The message that had been hanging in the darkness still blinked on and off, but it had instantly gotten smaller. Say it again, John Kramer said. The big board will tell you lies, so you have to answer it with the truth. It's the fight. Say, I belong to the kingdom of the kings, and I'm free. I belong to the kingdom of the kings, Daniel said with more courage. I'm free. He sang it louder. The big board paused at the words. The thrusting message suddenly shrunk down to letters only a few inches high. And inside the darkness, the ghost slave's image screamed out as if it had been touched by fire. No! Tell it the truth about yourself, Susan said, looking from Daniel to the reflection in the big board. Tell it what you read in the book of the kings. The words Daniel had read in the old book came to his mind. I am free, Daniel said in a loud voice. I am a new creation. The old things have passed away. The new has come. The old things have passed away, and that means you. Daniel pointed straight at the distorted reflection of himself. The ghost slave screamed in agony. I hate you. You're a no-good rank-blank fool. You're a zero. You have no points. You're pointless. You're a pointless fool in a pointless town and a pointless world, reduced to zero below zero. No kings, no nothing. You are part of that pointless zero nothing. Yeah, you're a little speck of dust in the gigantic universe, spinning in nothingness with no meaning. That's what they want us to believe. That you're on a little speck of dust, a little third rock from the sun, a little tiny pebble of earth. So much tinier than the gigantic sun that it revolves around. Whatever. But Daniel was no longer listening to the lying accusations of the ghost slave. He was remembering all the words he had read in the book, words that had often seemed full of mystery and wonder. I am a citizen of the kingdom, Daniel said louder. I am a child of the kings. I can do all things through him that strengthens me. Say it, Susan said with a smile, nodding her head up and down. I'm not a slave. I'm free in the kingdom, Daniel shouted out. And when he said that, the gobs of slimy darkness fell off the boy and disappeared. At the same time, the reflected ghost slave on the big board shrieked and fell backwards. The chain fell out of its hands and loosened off Daniel himself and was gone. Susan and John Kramer both clapped their hands together when they saw the power of the chain broken. Daniel looked down at himself, almost in surprise at his boldness. That's when he saw, deep inside himself, the royal kingdom light burning in splendor and brightness. It was for freedom that the King's Son set me free, Daniel said with a smile, and I am more than a conqueror in him. Nothing will separate me from the love of the kings, not points or failures, not death or life, not ghost slaves or chains or powers or snakes. There's nothing that can take away their love. And with that, Daniel reached in his pocket and pulled out his black, shiny number card. He held it up and looked at his face in the darker reflection. Even from the face of the card, the ghost slave tried to speak. The point system is the only game in town, the only game in the But Daniel cocked his arm and threw the flimsy card straight at the big board. The card hit with the sound of a crack of thunder. A great sputter of lights and electricity sizzled as the big board seemed to go berserk. In an instant, the dark power of the big board was split in a roar in the deeper world. Daniel felt a rushing tingle all up and down his body as the decision was completed. For an instant, he saw the Prince of Kings himself right in front of him. The king's son was touching Daniel's right leg with his hand. "I'm granting you your deep wish," the king's son seemed to whisper. A new sensation shot through Daniel's body. The great cloud of glorious light lifted away as the big board sputtered and smoked and tottered back and forth. "Let's get out of here," Susan yelled. Daniel nodded. He hopped on the back of her bike. Just as the two red bicycles started to move, the boys lying on the ground began to struggle to their feet as if coming awake. The boys looked confused, trying to figure out what had happened. That's when they saw the tottering big board. "It's going to fall," Barry shrieked. The boys scrambled and dragged themselves away as fast as they could. The big board rocked back and forth. Lights flashed across the surface of the dark panel, spewing out a garble of nonsense letters and numbers. Nothing added up. But Daniel was hardly paying attention. He was reaching down and feeling his shorter right leg. His leg was still tingling where the king's son had touched it. In fact, the whole side of his body seemed to be glowing in a new but pleasing sensation. "Something's happening to my leg," Susan said to Daniel. Daniel said to Susan over her shoulder. "The king's son touched it, and now something is happening." Susan aimed the handlebars toward the sky and began pedaling. They hadn't gone 10 feet into the air when the big board let out a tremendous groan and then fell straight forward. A great screaming sizzle split the air. The haze of dust and smoke rose from around the edges of the dark panel and lay on the field. Susan was smiling as she pedaled higher into the sky. Daniel looked down at the mess on the ground. People seemed to be running in confused circles like ants. The darkness inside the big board looked pale and weak, like wisps of a broken cobweb. For a moment, the interior of the dark panel seemed to be full of writhing, dying creatures that resembled spiders and insects and snakes. The big board sputtered and flashed once more and then went completely and utterly blank. Now the big board is ranked blank. Now, just not to nitpick, but I thought it was up where everybody could see it, up on the platform. I must admit the platform was really close to the ground, but he jumped off and fell, hurt his leg. And now it fell forward, which would be toward the crowd, toward the platform, toward the people, toward the boys, so it fell in a big swinging heap, and now it ain't working. It's direct blank. It's blank, empty. The darkness inside the big board looked pale and weak, like the wisp of a broken cobweb. For a moment, the interior of the dark panel seemed to be full of writhing, dying creatures that resembled spiders and insects and snakes, a bunch of nasties. The big board sputtered and flashed once more and then went completely and utterly blank. Okay, so that's it. End of that chapter. So, finally something good's happening. I'd like to see that happen in my life. Instead of putting up with all these snakes, demons biting in people, evil voices in people's heads. I'd like to see a Spirit Flyer bicycle that I could fly to expos and meetings and be able to speak at meetings and be able to help people on their farms. I need a vehicle. I'm praying for a vehicle. I'm praying for moving capability. An angel driving a white semi. I prayed for that never, and I got it when I'm in Missouri. I didn't get it when we moved from Denver to Kansas, but from Kansas, Missouri, I had a white semi driven by a Mormon, Dean Lobb. Hallelujah. An angel. So I need another one. All right, well, that's about it. God bless everybody. Thank you. Tony, how you doing? God bless, brother. Come down and help me. I need help. No, I'm hoping for a vehicle. I said that. Praying for a vehicle. Dave was going to come up from Texas, and we were going to go to the Preparedness Expo in Marshfield on the 26th and 27th of August. And there's a Roby, Missouri meeting Sunday. This Sunday there's a meeting Sunday. So I'm hoping to get to that. Ha ha ha. And James may come up and pick me up tomorrow and make go shopping. So, all right. God bless everybody. Thank you.